Alright guys, welcome back to JBSR Plays It. First off, I'd like to say that I am sorry. I didn't actually get another video up, or another podcast for, the week 9 preview. Yeah, I have a baby, sometimes that happens. And it's not like I have a studio space, like I'm filming in my living room. So, sorry about that. I did pretty well last week again on picks. I went 10-3. And a couple of the picks, the ones that I got wrong, thought the Chargers would win. I think it's just because I like the Chargers. I picked the 49ers, even though there was that small voice in the back of my head telling me to pick the Rams, but I'm like, no, the Rams were home last time. That's why it was close. Or they started well anyways, and no. And I picked the Broncos. In all honesty, it wasn't until halfway through the game when I remembered that the Patriots had won 41 or 42 straight games to that point at home against the AFC. And for some reason, Tom Brady always gets a home game against Peyton Manning every season. I don't understand why. News so far this week that I have seen, the biggest one came out today, yesterday, I guess, is Adrian Peterson pled no contest to the abuse charges, will not face jail time. What is he gonna... Defer to finding guilt for 2 years on imposing $4,000 fine and 80 hours of community service, which is, I guess, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those tough things, because in the South, they're a little more lenient on that. Like, if he had committed that act in where I'm in Massachusetts, probably would have gone to jail for about 5 years. But because down there, and I'm not trying to lump all of the South together, I'm not saying everyone has the same moral standards, but generally down South, and not as much, but slightly in the Midwest, that is a little, corporal punishment is a little more accepted. So I didn't think if it went to court, he'd be found guilty in the first place. I had my doubts about that. But the question that is raised about this is, will he be reinstated to play, not necessarily this week, but just for this season? Like, what is going to happen now? Because he pled guilty. And technically, he was never suspended. He was put on an exemption list. He was paid this whole time, but he was never suspended. So will he play for the Vikings again this season? And I guess that goes to at all, because people were talking before the season even started that Vikings would probably cut him after the season because he's getting paid like $18 million next year, some ridiculous amount like that. I highly doubt that we will see him this week. Well, it doesn't matter, they're on a bye, so never mind. I highly doubt next week, week 11, when he comes back, when the Vikings come back, I highly doubt we will see him then, but who knows? It remains to be seen. You never know. I don't work for ESPN, so I can bash Goodell all I want, and I will say I have no confidence in him right now. And the Peterson thing has that one's drifted to the back of everyone's mind. As terrible as it was, as much as I still am pissed off at the Vikings for it, or not the Vikings, the Adrian Peterson himself. The Vikings at least suspended him for that game and then put him on the exempt list. I know they were talking about reinstating him for week 3, but they did the right thing, and it didn't take a long, drawn-out process. He's been on that list all season, and that's why it's been a non-issue. So I don't know what Goodell's going to find, and then the Players Union will get involved if he does suspend him, because that's what they do, and if he doesn't suspend him, there'll be backlash, and it's going to get ugly one way or another. Unless Goodell says he's suspended 8 games, or, and he's already served 7 of them. Or whatever it may be. So, I don't know how all that's going to go down. At this point, I don't think, I can't say that for sure. The Vikings, what are we sitting at, 4-5? Yeah, 4-5 for the Vikings. As of right now, the 6th seed would be the 5-3 Seahawks. Right now, the Vikings are number 9 in the NFC in the standings. So realistically, they are still in the playoff hunt. It's funny to imagine that because they haven't exactly looked great at all, but they are still very much in the playoff picture. So maybe Adrian Peterson coming back would help them in that regard. because I have no confidence in... I think there's a lot of good teams in the NFC, but I don't see... Like, if you told me right now that the Patriots or the Broncos or even lately the Steelers and the Colts, if any of them won the Super Bowl, it wouldn't surprise me. But when you look at the NFC, I can point out a flaw with the Patriots, and that's if Gronk goes down, how much does his team fall apart? But, that's a what-if scenario. The Broncos... excuse me. Broncos' run game is inconsistent, but it's still there for the most part. Other than that, I can't point out any flaws. Colts, it's Andrew Luck carrying the team on his back, but you're talking about the third best team in that conference now, and you're finding some flaws, but you still wouldn't be surprised if they won the Super Bowl. Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger's been on fire the last 2 weeks. And then you look at Chiefs are the 6th seed at 5-3, Browns are 5-3, Bills are 5-3, Dolphins are 5-3, Chargers are 5-4, Ravens are 5-4. 11 teams are over 500 right now. The 12 seed Texans are 4-5. And with competent quarterback play, they'd be above 500 as well. The AFC looks more solid. Now, if I go into the NFC, and I'll get more into this, tomorrow I will have my power rankings up, and I'll get a little more into all these teams, but the Cardinals, injuries. The Lions, their offense has been terrible. The Eagles, Nick Foles has not looked very good. Not even that he hasn't looked as good last season, he hasn't looked that good. And Mark Sanchez goes in and basically does what Foles would normally do anyways. So he's interchangeable with Mark Sanchez, which, again, I'm going to be on the positive side in that Mark Sanchez got a bad rap in New York. They won when the team was doing what they wanted to do. But when it had to fall on him, that's not really where he succeeds. So, but I think any quarterback, EJ Manuel, you could probably pop him in the Eagles and he'd do fine. But the Eagles have their flaw. The Saints are the number 4 seed right now, and by virtue of playing in the worst division in football. 5 seed are the Cowboys. They've lost 2 straight. It's not hard to find flaws with them. 6 seed are the Seahawks. They look terrible. 7 seed Packers. They've been all over the freaking place. The Packers are the equivalent of the Steelers right now. The only difference is you have someone who people associate with having a better quarterback. Everyone's always sleeping on Big Ben. I've never understood that. Big Ben, I don't think there's ever been a season where I wouldn't have put him in my top 10 quarterbacks without question. And this season I'd throw him in that top 5. 49ers are 4-4. They look terrible. And then 9 Vikings, 4-5. And then after that, Panthers, Bears, Rams. Yes, the Rams are in playoff contention technically, because that's how much of a drop-off there is in the NFC. So anything is possible in that conference. But all that aside, my little spiel aside, Pokemon has ruined me. I don't even know. Spiel? Spiel's the word. Spiel. Most adorable Pokemon of all time. We'll get into that maybe on my main channel one day. But let's get into the Week 9 recap. Just pretend I have a stinger to go here. I don't. I am going to work on the production quality of this and actually make it seem like a real podcast, but I don't have any audio guys, so for now, I'm just going to lead it in myself. So, Thursday night game, did I recap this, right? Saints are going to win a division now. I need to get back on my consistent schedule with this. Saints will win this division. They clinched it right there. 4-4, they clinched it. Because I heard a joke, someone said they could lose 8 straight and they would tie for first place with the 4-12 Falcons, which I thought was giving the Falcons a lot of credit, thinking they'd get the 4 wins. So, let's go on to the Sunday afternoon games. First off, the Browns barely beat the Buccaneers 22-17. There were talks about Manziel coming back in, so Brian Hoyer, the stat line, 21-34, 300, 2 touchdowns. It doesn't tell the whole story. This team's looking rough. This team is missing Alex Mack in a big way. You lose your center. And again, you see it with the offensive line struggles in San Diego when Hardwick went down for the year. You see how terrible or how badly that can affect your offensive line. So, the Buccaneers, so close and yet so far. And everyone can say, the Bucks could have, one score difference, they could have won it. Here's the thing. As a Bills fan, I have seen plenty of seasons where we've gone 6-10, and we could have easily, with 5 plays, gone 11-5. I've seen those seasons. I've seen them constantly. But good teams win those close games. I'm not implying that the Browns are necessarily a good team, but if you want someone who can win close games, you look at the Arizona Cardinals, who we'll get to in a second, where it seems like everything except for this week, they've only won by like a point, 4 points. Let me pull up. I want to look real quick at their Arizona point differential of plus 36. That's not great. To put that in perspective, Miami is 5-3, which means 2 more losses, and they're at plus 60. Ravens are 5-4 at plus 66. They're an exception. They blow people out constantly. Plus 36 for the team with the best record in football. So, good teams win close games. Great teams win all the close games. And elite teams just avoid them completely, I believe is how the saying goes. And bad teams lose the close games, and that's what the Buccaneers are. They are a bad team. As you'll see with my power rankings tomorrow, bad doesn't even start to describe it. So the Browns, 5-3, they're in that middle. As of right now, the Ravens, who a lot of people thought were the clear favorite to win this division, are now sitting at dead last at 5-4. It is that close in this division. So, Browns are very much in it. They got the Bengals coming up next week. That'll be a pretty big game. Browns, they've already played half their division slate. They're 1-2 in the division, and that's hurting them. Bengals are still 2-0 in their division, so losing to the Bengals, that pretty much will put them definitely out of the division, I would think. With the way some of the other teams are playing. And I think you can start to wonder if they'll even be in playoff contention. And I know that's hard to say with them sitting at 5-3, but they should be 6-2. They should have taken care of business against the Jaguars. Any team can win any Sunday, and the Jaguars haven't looked as bad as 0-6 implied at that point. Or was it 0-7? I don't know what their buys were like, but they were 0-7. 0-7? No, they were 0-6. They should have beaten the Jaguars. So moving on to the Arizona Cardinals beating a Tony Romo-less Cowboys team 28-17. The Carson Palmer resurgence continues. The Brandon Weeden resurgence, needless to say, is non-existent. Although I'm pretty sure this is year 2 of the Cowboys in Madden for some reason. And I know it doesn't emulate real life in any way whatsoever, but in Madden, for some strange reason, once a quarterback hits about 27, they just decline, like more rapidly than any running back. Fred Jackson will be, 34 if he plays a season after the first season in the franchises. He might go down 2 points, but that's it. Tony Romo is probably sitting as a free agent right now as a 73 overall. Right next to Jay Cutler, Ben Roethlisberger, and Phillip Rivers. Like, that's just how this game works for some reason, so we might see Brandon Weeden in this game. But that's fake. This is back to real life. Brandon Weeden, Colt McCoy looked pretty good for the Redskins that, in that time that he filled in Washington in between Cousins and Griffin. So maybe he got a bad rap in Cleveland. Clearly, Brandon Weeden did not. Clearly, there was a bigger issue there. So, the big news coming out of this game, I mean, obviously, 2-game losing streak for the Cowboys hurts, but they're still sitting at 6-3. They still have that 5 seed. There should be still some games on their schedule that are winnable. I don't think everyone needs to calm down. Maybe this won't be an 11 or 12 win team. Maybe it'll only be 9 or 10. But that might still be good enough to get in the playoffs. So I wouldn't panic if I was a Cowboys fan. But your Super Bowl aspirations might have been a little premature. But DeMarco Murray, 19 rushing attempts for second straight week. So his workload's coming down. Unfortunately, he did it against one of the best run defenses in the league. And so his streak of 8 consecutive games with at least 100 yards, that is officially done. He only had 79 carries, which I believe was like 4.3 yards per carry, which for most running backs is pretty good. For DeMarco Murray, that's a terrible game for him. Shows the big difference in how high quality of a player he's been so far this year. But the Cardinals, they win. The joke was, if they were back, if this was 2002 when they were in the AFC or the NFC East again, they're 4-0 in that division this year. They would be sitting pretty. As it is, they play in the NFC West, and they're still sitting pretty there. They're 2 games up on a Seahawks team that looks pretty awful. Not as awful as that guy trying to catch that ball. Next up, we've got the Eagles winning 31-21 over the Texans. Storyline coming out of this game: Nick Foles goes down with a broken collarbone. He was out, needless to say, for that game. Not necessarily ruled out for the season, but it could be a while. And in his stead came in Mark Sanchez, who I talked about a little earlier. 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I know this one for a fact, 2 interceptions. Which seems kind of bad with 2 picks, but considering he hadn't played in almost 2 years, got to cut the guy a little slack. Also, Nick Foles probably would have put up similar numbers. Foles went out with 1 pick and 1 touchdown, so it's not like he was doing incredible. LaShawn McCoy continues to get his game back on track. Jeremy Maclin continues to be the only receiving option, worthwhile at least, on the Eagles. 6 catches for 158 yards, which is pretty insane. Arian Foster couldn't get going for the Texans. J.J. Watt was J.J. Watt. Ryan Fitzpatrick continues to kill another franchise. I'm just trying to throw for a 98-yard touchdown right now. Don't mind me. And almost. It's the Eagles are 6-2. There's the NFC East. It's weird. If you look at the record, it's like, it's a 2-horse race. But neither of the teams at the top are inspiring any confidence in anyone else. The only difference is at least the Eagles are a proven commodity, whereas the Cowboys are sort of the surprise team. A lot of people thought they would go like 3-13, 4-12, somewhere along those lines. So it's the Mark Sanchez show for the rest of the season, or at least for an extended period, which is not as scary as you might think. This is someone who has been to 2 AFC championship games. He's got some playoff experience. So once if they get into the playoffs, you feel pretty confident. But until then, you gotta wonder. This team went from potential 12-4, 11-5 to maybe a 9-7 team sneaking in the back door. But again, that could be everyone, so who even knows? Next up, speaking of Sanchez, Kansas City Chiefs annihilate the Jets 24-10. I say annihilate because Alex Smith with 2 touchdown passes, which brings him up to 10 for the year. This is one of his better days. By the way, quick fact that I just found out. Kansas City Chiefs, their wide receivers have combined for exactly 0 touchdown receptions. I'm assuming everything's gone to, obviously their tight ends and running backs. Maybe even the fullback. I don't know. But it's kind of weird. Michael Vick, 21 of 28, so efficient. But obviously couldn't finish off. Chris Johnson, there was a sighting of Chris Johnson, 11 rushes, 69 yards. I don't know why Ivory wasn't the lead back over there. And then Percy Harvin with 11 catches for 129 yards. So, pretty good acquisition there, I would say. The stat lines just look ugly, but it's a big win. So the Jets, 1-8, done. Like, if you were holding out hope, I know I said that maybe they could have gone on a run and gone 7-9, 8-8. I take that back. I took that back last week. I double take it back now. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team go 2-14 and go on a run in the opposite direction. I'm sorry, Rex, you're gone, but look at it this way. Idzik might be gone too. And it'll be much easier for Rex Ryan to get a job. The Chiefs are 5-3. They're looking pretty good. You know, they're actually, they rose up. They're number 2 in that AFC West now, which sort of seemed like they would just be playing 3 and playing for the 6th seed. Now, that's not necessarily a guarantee. Now they might actually have a chance. I don't think they're going to compete for the division, but they are only a game back. So the Chiefs are looking really good, and you got a big game coming up. The Bills are on a bye this week, so you got the Chiefs playing the Bills next week. Both teams are at 5-3. Both teams looking to, as of right now, the Chiefs would be the 6th seed. The Bills are sitting at number 8. And then after that, the Bills play Miami to finish off their 2 games this season. So big couple of weeks. I don't know what the next game is going to be for the Chiefs, but you know, at least for the Bills, this is going to be a huge stretch. And you're going to see a lot of... There's a lot, like I said, basically from the 5 seed to the 11 seed, there's one game separating all of these teams. Steelers are 6-3, Ravens are 5-4. That one game difference separates all of these teams. You're going to start seeing that clear up because they're going to start beating each other up. Miami, I think, has the toughest of the remaining schedule. But it's, you know, the Bills are a team. I'm not just saying I'm a Bills fan, but the Bills have the best chance to clean themselves out, even though they lost to the Chargers. They play the Browns, they play the Chiefs, and they play the Dolphins again. They've already beaten the Dolphins once. So the team that can help themselves the most in all of this seeding would be the Bills. I'm not saying they're going to win all of those games, but they're going to have to if they want to make the playoffs because that last month of their schedule is brutal. You know, what did I hear someone say? Someone said they'd want to, I think it was at a Grantland podcast, where they'd love to see Idzik just go fire Rex and trade their first round pick for Tony Sperano, just to ruin them one last time before he goes. It's his own fault. A lot of people are like, you know, there's always the two sides of the argument. It's like, oh, well, he's got the $22 million in cap space, and then it's, oh, well, you know, he wants to keep that to re-sign his future stars. Well, number one, he doesn't have any future stars on this team. And number two, the way that some of these teams can function is you sign some of these veteran guys. You had, you know, some players out there who could have helped. Sign them to a 1-year deal, 2-year deal. You're not going to sign the young guys. You don't want to sign them to the big, elaborate deals if that's the way Idzik is going, if you're trying to build up depth and trying to, you know, build up your own guys the way the Packers do. It's not working so well for the Packers right now because they're starting to realize that Aaron Rodgers just makes everyone look better. And nothing against Jordy Nelson, but, like, obviously that defense inspires fear in nobody. You know, but if that's where you're going to build it, that's fine. But you got to sign some veterans. You know, you signed Vic to that deal, and that's great. But all that did was stir up more controversy. That's not the type of veteran you go after. You go after some of these guys. You look at holes in your roster. Champ Bailey ended up retiring. Their secondary is terrible. You're telling me you can't sign Champ Bailey to a freaking $2 million deal for 1 year and see what he's got left in him, if anything? You know, those are the kind of things you do with that cap space. You don't blow it on big free agents. You spend it on some of the guys with cheap, short deals, and you go from there. That's where the issue is. And, you know, plus, yeah, there's not really... Who are you re-signing? Your best player is the D-tackle last year who stole the rookie, or the defensive player of the year, defensive rookie of the year, I'm sorry, from Kiko Alonso. He's still on a rookie deal. You still got another year before you even have to consider re-signing him. You spend some money on some 1-2 year deals, and you go from there. Getting Percy Harvin was a start, but that's the deal you do when you're sitting at 500 and you think that's just my one piece left. That's not something when you're sitting at 1-5, 1-6, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger on that. That'll turn our season around. So anyways, enough rambling about that. Moving on, the Bengals take care of business against the Jaguars, 33-23. If you're a Bengals fan, Or if you're just like me and you're just rooting for the Bengals, you can't feel good about the fact that it was that close. Bortles, I think he had like 2 or 3 interceptions again, as he's tending to do. I try not to read too much into the interceptions. I try and defend him a little bit because he is a rookie. He's going to make some mistakes. He's making some good... he's 22 of 33. He's making some dumb decisions, but... Back in the day, what was the stat I saw? Bart Starr versus Johnny Unitas. It was like they had played in 16 games. Bart Starr threw for 20 picks in those games, and Unitas threw for 22 picks. Back in the day... turnovers weren't a factor. Like, that was just a thing that happened, and you move on. Obviously, nowadays, the game has changed. Ball control, possessions, all that stuff is very big. But that said, Drew Brees has always been a guy who's thrown for 15 interceptions in a season, but he'll get you 35 touchdowns. So, if he's going to throw some picks, that's fine. But as long as the decision-making starts getting better. That's where you got to worry about it. The Bengals, Dalton, slightly efficient. Hill, the rookie, with 154 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I'd say you're just playing the hot hand at that point. But I'm not going to sit here and think that, they're benching Bernard. I don't think that's at all what's going down. I think it's just Hill got hot, and you let him do his thing. I don't know. I'm not rerunning my simulations because I did those just sort of for my own fun. But I had the Bengals taking that 5 or the 6 seed. I am not nearly as confident in that. They're sitting at 5-2-1 in first place, but they could get hot. AJ Green is back, and it didn't matter. So they could get hot, and that could make a difference, and they could just be as dominant as they looked in those first 3 weeks, or the wheels could completely fall off, and this team is sitting at like 8-7-1 at the end of the year. It could go either way, and no one would be shocked either way. Next up, speaking of teams that we thought the wheels would fall off, wrong team. Dolphins win 37-0 over the Chargers. Phillip Rivers, his MVP candidacy, that's done. It's done. Unless they win 9 or 7 straight, whatever it would be. And he throws for 4 touchdowns and no picks in all of those games. His candidacy is out the window. 0 touchdowns, obviously. 12 of 23, 138 yards, 3 picks. Tannehill, again, I said it about Nick Foles. I'll say it about Tannehill. It's the same system, obviously. Everyone keeps making a big deal about Bill Lazor, this and that, and, installing that offense in Miami, which is true. And the problem is, not problem, Ryan Tannehill's a better fit for that system than Nick Foles is. So he's gonna run it a little bit better. And he's showing it here. He's running the ball pretty well too, which is a part that's missing from Nick Foles' game. It's Miami's looking pretty good at 5-3. There's a real, it could be again. Everyone always buys into the Dolphins this time of year because they look pretty good, and then it's just their team just implodes and they go 7-9. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do this year, but they still got another game against the Bills. They got another game against the Patriots. They beat the Patriots last time and they lost to the Bills. They could go, they could win both of those games. They could lose both of them. They could split them. And none of those would surprise me. But the defense is looking pretty good. Cameron Wake obviously has been a beast all season, but the rest of the defense is sort of starting to play well around him. There's a lot left to be desired from this team, but a lot to like at the same time. So, and the Chargers, they went from a team that I thought was a shoo-in at, the 1 seed, the Super Bowl, all that stuff. And now they're on the outside looking in. And it doesn't look like it's getting much easier because you still got another game against the Broncos. So, moving on, next up, we've got the Vikings squeezing out a win, 29-26 over RG3 and the Redskins. Yeah, he's back. And it wasn't even that long. He was only out, what was that? 6 games, 7 games that he missed? Well, 6 in like 3 quarters, I guess. He looked okay. He looked okay. He didn't lead the team in rushing, which is good. Alfred Morris with 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. 18 of 28, 251, a touchdown. I don't know how many picks. He could have looked worse. But he didn't look as good as Colt McCoy did. I don't know why. I don't know. If he gets hurt again, this guy's just getting all the worst luck. And he's going to get injured again and again and again and again. They've got to... I don't know if they can look at another option, because the problem you're looking at is RG3 is a pretty good quarterback when he's on top of his game. He just hasn't been in 3 years. We've seen Colt McCoy. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a backup quarterback someplace where there's an option of him getting some starts. I could see him going as a backup to the Jets if they draft another rookie. I could see him going to the Rams if they don't sign Austin Davis, which is looking more and more like a possibility. I could see there's a lot of teams that he could fit on as a backup with the potential to play. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, if the Redskins only knew, hindsight's 2020, and I bet they wish they had it right now, because they turned down a 3rd-round pick for this guy, and they couldn't get a 7th out of him right now. I guess that's not true. Idzik would probably give him a freaking 2nd. Teddy Bridgewater looked pretty okay in this. I don't understand. McKinnon gets the carries, but bulk of the yards. He's on pace for, I think, like 850, 900 yards or whatever. And Asiata, this is his 2nd game this year where he had 3 rushing touchdowns. I'm not understanding the split in carries. And it's coming from someone who watched a stat line for Jerome Bettis that first Super Bowl season for the Steelers with Roethlisberger, where he had 4 carries for 3 touchdowns and 1 yard or something like that. I don't know. These are 2 teams that are technically alive in the playoffs, but I don't expect either one of them to really stand the chance at it. But they're playing well enough to not get a top 10 pick, but they need a top 10 pick. Actually, the Redskins don't. They'll just trade it away. Next up, I guess the stunner of the week. Shouldn't really be a stunner. St. Louis Rams beat the 49ers 13-10 on a last-second fumble at the 1-yard line by Kaepernick. They couldn't review it. It was one of those things, whatever the ruling on the field when it was going to stand, because you were not going to get a conclusive review to turn it over. Kaepernick's claiming he has it, which, of course he's claiming he has it. You can't say, oh, yeah, I dropped the ball before I crossed the line, but no one's going to believe it one way or the other. It doesn't matter. Austin Davis, 13-24, 105 yards, a touchdown, probably a pick or 2 in there. I'm wondering now, because I thought he was like, okay, you know what? Take a gamble on him. You get rid of Bradford anyways, keep him around. The Rams will probably re-sign him for next year, assuming that Jeff Fisher and company all stay on board. Which hopefully they have that kind of patience. But if they do, Austin Davis could be signed, but they're looking hopefully at drafting their quarterback of the future again, letting Bradford go. I don't think Austin Davis... When Tony Romo first burst on as an undrafted free agent, he was like a 2-year pro as well. Like he wasn't a rookie. He was on the roster for a little bit as like the 3rd-string quarterback behind... Here you go. Drew Bledsoe and Drew Henson. Those were the 2 guys in front of him. Drew Henson, who was drafted by the Texans, in like the third round of their expansion draft. Could have been a first round pick, but he was playing baseball instead, so they took his rights just in case. And then years later, he decided to to go back. Cowboys got his rights. He was the backup, and then he clearly never made it because a lot of you guys who were only like 12 or 13 when that happened have no idea who the hell Drew Henson is. Tony Romo came in, exploded onto the scene because no one had ever seen this guy before. And by the end of the season, they made the playoffs that year, but by the end, and I believe that was the year against the Seahawks. Yeah, that was the year against the Seahawks in the playoffs where he fumbled the hold for the field goal try because he was still the field goal he was still the holder on those because he was technically the backup quarterback. But he was hot in the beginning and he kind of cooled off. But he didn't cool off to this extent. He went from putting up like Colin Kaepernick type numbers where, when Kaepernick's on a pretty good game. He wasn't throwing for 400 yards. He was throwing a pretty decent amount, a couple touchdowns, maybe a pick, because he idolized Brett Favre as a kid, so he was kind of a gunslinger. By the end, he was sort of 50% completion percentage. This is right at the turn where everything started becoming so pass-friendly, or pass-happy. 50% completion percentage, a touchdown, a pick. He cooled off, but not to this extent where he was only putting up 105 yards on 13 completions. So, Austin Davis, maybe it was a little too soon. The defense is starting to come along. They had 8 sacks in this game. Robert Quinn with 2 of them. So he's up to 3 on the year, which is pretty pathetic when you think about it. They lost their left tackle for the year. They lost their number 1 wide receiver for the year, which, by the way, the number 1 wide receiver would have been the number 6 wide receiver on the Broncos. And on offense, they've got a couple pieces on the offensive line. They've got Jake Long for however good he's going to be for however much longer he plays. You've got Greg Robinson filling in. Greg Robinson's looked pretty good, but I don't know what he looked like at left tackle in this game. Tight end, they have Cook, who I think looks okay. I think his stats are good because he's the number 1 receiving option they have. Their wide receivers, like Tavon Austin is just someone that I don't think Jeff Fisher knows how to use. My favorite thing now when I do a Madden franchise, because I always pick the Bills, obviously, when I'm doing a real one. So I'll trade Mike Williams to the Rams for Tavon Austin because I want speed receivers. So he's going to be better playing for me anyways. And I also get that $7 million salary off my books. But yeah, so they don't, you talk about your main positions: quarterback, question mark; running back, bigger question mark; wide receiver, even bigger question mark; tight end is okay; offensive line, you got one guy long term, one guy potentially long term, and a couple, they'll be okay. But they look much better on defense, and I think that's why this team is 3-5. And the 49ers, on the other hand, this will probably be the only place you can listen to where I talk more about the Rams than the 49ers. I've been saying this whole time, Harbaugh, that's distraction is becoming more and more of a distraction. I think I'm in line with everyone else where I think I'm just rooting against the 49ers just because I want to see Harbaugh gone because I think it's ridiculous. There's going to be some job openings. There's obviously the Raiders job, which I think he would consider because he wants to stay in the Bay Area. But there's other jobs. The Jets job might not be something he can pass up. Kaepernick, besides that fumble, which was questionable, obviously, he's Kaepernick. You're going to get whatever out of him. The offense isn't doing its part really well. Aldon Smith is back after this week's game. I was joking around with this earlier. They have the Saints at home, which is Saints are a Super Bowl team at home. But they got the Saints at home, and then they start playing. They got the Seahawks twice in like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know if that's starting in week 11 or if that's week 12. But sucks for the Seahawks that the 49ers, they don't play them until they get Aldon Smith back. So this is not a good spot for the 49ers. I will say that. 49ers 1-2 in the division already. Who have they've lost to the Cardinals? Is that who they've had to have played the Cardinals, right? Because they're finished with the Rams, and I don't know. Rams are 2-1 in their division. That's just funny to me. But yeah, 49ers are in trouble. Teams that are not in trouble, however, the Patriots in Manning-Brady 16. Patriots annihilate 43-21. There was no running in this game. If you were looking for a good rushing attack, you came to the wrong place because both teams were good against the run. So Manning 34-57 for 438 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I think 1 pick. Brady 35-53, 333 yards, 4 touchdowns, 110 pass attempts between the two. I believe that's an NFL record. The leading rusher for the Broncos had 18 yards. Leading rusher for the Patriots had 33. Gronk is back. I don't mean that as a pun. It's official. Like he's back. I hope for the Patriots fans' sake that he is back and he can play a full season, because I'd love to see. I am a Bills fan through and through. I have been my whole life. But I respect the Patriots. I respect Tom Brady. The thought of him playing in another uniform, as much as I jokingly said ship him to the Bills, it disgusts me to think that he'd ever play anywhere else but New England. He's way too well loved here. That was one hell of a run there, Doug Martin. You are way better in-game than you are in real life. But I'd love to see Tom. I'd love to see him get one more ring. I want to see Peyton get at least one more. If he's got 2 Super Bowl rings, that'll shut some people up. I'd like to see him get at least one more, but I'd like to see Tom get one more as well. Because I think he had 3 rings, but he hasn't won one in almost 10 years. Like, he got all that success at the beginning of his career. And I'd love to see him get one, as much as I don't think the Patriots have put together the best roster in the world. They're a team that can overcome it. Obviously, winning this game, Patriots are 7-2, Broncos are 6-2. Those are your top 2 seeds in the AFC right now. This game could be huge, deciding a tiebreaker, or it could not be. Patriots have won this game before and ended up 2 games back of the Broncos at the end of the day. So, Patriots have a tough schedule. Broncos still have 2 games against the Raiders left. That's just how it goes sometimes. I'd have more to say about it, but they've played this game. That's number 16 for them. Both guys showed up. Brady had a better game. It didn't come down to the quarterbacks deciding it. This was a team effort. It's just, good times. It is funny because besides the Seahawks-Raiders game I'm about to talk about, I'll just go through real quick, and I'm sorry if I spoil it for you, but come on, man, it's Wednesday. Patriots 43-21 over the Broncos. Steelers 43-23 over the Ravens. Colts 40-24 over the Giants. So your 2 night games and your biggest game of the late afternoon all have points, like final scores within a couple of points of each other. I just thought that was kind of funny. And I'm looking at it now just straight in a row. So next up, we got the Seahawks narrowly beating the Oakland Raiders 30-24. I've been saying it all along. The Raiders are 0-8 right now. There's a good chance they go 0-16 because they've got that tough schedule. Because, again, they are a bad team. And bad teams lose close games. And good teams win them. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they are a good team by any stretch of the imagination, but they are certainly not number 32 in my power rankings, and they are also not 31. They're playing close against everybody. They've played close to New England. They played close to the Seahawks now. They will probably get blown out by the Broncos twice. Although I will say, because if you look at that schedule, one of their best, they've got the Chiefs. That's potential. That's one of the easy games on their schedule, and that's scary. They've got the Bills. I am a Bills fan. I know you do not trust the Bills. But that last week 17, they got the Broncos. Now, obviously, if the Broncos had won against the Patriots on Sunday, it would have been a more plausible scenario. But Broncos could be resting starters. It could give the Raiders a chance to win. Could. So this could be an 0-16 team, but you're not looking at it like their quarterback is running out of the back of the end zone. It's just sort of like, well, it's unfortunate, but they played pretty well. And whoever takes over this team has some pieces to work with. That's another part when I do my power rankings. I factor in pieces. Like, when you get to the bottom of the barrel, like, who's there that when the new coach comes in next year, you can reasonably build a team around. The Raiders have Derek Carr, who is the best of the rookie quarterbacks, which is sad because I think he has the least amount of weapons. No, wait, they've all got pretty terrible weapons. You've got Khalil Mack, who's looking really... Did he have a sack in this game? I don't know, but before this game at least, he did not have a sack on the season, but he's looked so good against the run that nobody cares. You've got some pieces there. So if someone like John Gruden wanted to walk in, he's not going to do it in year 1, but by year 2 or 3, you could have a pretty good team on the field here in Oakland or Los Angeles or San Antonio or wherever the hell they're playing at that point. Personally, I have a lot of fun just going through on Madden and just making a franchise. It's like, okay, I'm going to be the Bills, but I'm going to take control of these 4 teams. I take control of the Jaguars, the Rams, the Chargers, and the Raiders. I send the Chargers and Rams to Los Angeles, and I send the Raiders to San Antonio, and Jacksonville, they go to London. Because I feel like that's where most people think is going to happen anyways. And no, I do not send the Bills to Toronto, you douchebags. They're staying in Buffalo. So, San Antonio Raiders kind of has a nice ring to it. Plus, they'd be in silver and black, and it'd sort of be like how Pittsburgh, everyone wears gold and black. You know, them and the Spurs be wearing silver and black. I think it would work. But besides that, that's neither here nor there. Steelers, in the game that I was the least confident in, they blow out the Ravens 43-23. Flacco actually didn't look terrible, but Ben Roethlisberger threw 6 touchdowns, second week in a row, NFL record. That means that he's done something that Peyton's never done, Tom Brady's never done, Dan Marino never did, Y.A. Tittle never did. So, really, really good stats for Roethlisberger, but more importantly, wins. And wins over 2 prominent playoff teams. Like, yeah, okay, they lost to the Broncos or the Browns. That's not a good loss. They got blown out. They barely beat them in the opening game. But they beat the Colts, and now they've beaten the Ravens. And I believe that they beat the Ravens twice already this year. I don't actually know. But either way, those are some good teams to beat if you're going to get hot at any point. Ravens, they're 5-4. I'm not pouring dirt on them or anything. Because I still, again, my only thinking is, and I've said this on Twitter, I've never actually said it here, the thought of Steve Bisciotti holding the Lombardi Trophy at the end of this particular season makes me want to, just makes me want to vomit. Like, the thought of that being a possibility just makes me sick. Not to say that the Ravens players don't deserve it, but Bisciotti holding up a Lombardi Trophy this season, I mean, there's a chance he will hold one again someday. But just this particular season, I couldn't do it. So, any loss for the Ravens is a good loss in my book. But yeah, Steelers, I told you guys Tomlin wouldn't get fired. Now he's not going anywhere. If that was ever a thought, he's not going anywhere. I don't know that they'll make the playoffs, but if they do, even if they sneak in there as a 6 seed, that's not a team anyone wants to play right now, I don't think. And next up, we'll wrap it up with the Monday night game. The Colts take care of business against the Giants, 40-23. Andrew Luck didn't exactly look great. He only had 354 yards and 4 touchdowns. Eli didn't look terrible. His completion percentage was crap, though. That 70%, I think we're back to, it's not going to happen. I think that's just where we're all at. Odell Beckham, 8 catches for 156 yards. This wide receiver class, I think, because I don't believe too much in Derek Carr's chances at Offensive Rookie of the Year, just because he might be playing for an 0-16, 1-15, 2-14 team, I don't think he's going to get any recognition. So I think the Offensive Rookie of the Year will be a wide receiver. Right now, my vote, Homer aside, it's Sammy Watkins. But it's him and Kelvin Benjamin. If they tied for it, I'd actually be content with that, because I think both of them have been equally as important to their teams, equally statistically well. Just Sammy Watkins has that edge in, I don't know if he has more catches, but he's got more yards. I mean, Watkins, he's on pace for almost 1,200 yards right now, and that's with E.J. Manuel for those first 4 games. I think that should be taken into account, that Kelvin Benjamin got a pretty good, Derek Anderson got hot in that first game, and then you got Cam Newton, who looked pretty good for a few weeks throwing the ball. But Odell Beckham, man, he's trying to make up for lost time. No rushing in this game again. Ahmad Bradshaw, the leading rusher, but I think the most carries went to Trent Richardson. Once again, they're gonna continue to think that he's salvageable. Just wipe the egg from your face and move on. You're literally just reopening the wound every time you hand that guy the ball. I think he's a free agent after the year anyways. Maybe not. Just let him go. Just let it go. Just let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. I will not start singing on this. Maybe. So yeah, we got a pretty good, had a pretty good Sunday, I'd say, because the Bills didn't play, so they couldn't lose, so I was content. Although everyone that I was hoping would lose so that they'd make up some ground didn't. Although seeing the Chargers lose helped. And that's it for this one. Like I said, I will be back. I'm going to film this right now. It's not a question. I'm going to film this right now. My power rankings will be up tomorrow, barring any sort of unseen or unforeseen issues with internet or whatever it may be. But it should be up tomorrow. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, please like it, share it with your friends, let everyone know. Say, hey, look, there's this weird guy. He plays some Madden on rookie mode. No one cares about that. But he's got some pretty good opinions on football. Or be like, hey, look, this guy's an idiot. Check him out. Because views are views. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe to me. I'm going to start working on getting this on iTunes. I don't know how challenging that is. I'm definitely going to look into it because it's worth a shot. And I'm pretty sure there's more room for NFL podcasts that aren't, I don't talk about fantasy. If you go on the podcast center, everything's about fantasy football. So maybe there are some people out there who don't want to see fantasy football. Maybe? I don't know. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. Let me know what you guys think. And all of that good stuff aside, I will see you guys next time.